Hello, hello, everyone. Back at it. Friday, fourth stream on Party Time. Hey, Jeff, how's it going? Party Time. Yes, Party Time on a Friday. Yeah, so we have fourth live stream here. Let me recap what I did off stream yesterday. I spent about 30 minutes, as I said, kind of taking a look at that copy test task. And as I kind of suspected, it was doing a little more than I realized at first. So when I trimmed it down, I lost some behavior that ended up affecting the PR during our smoke test. So let's bring this up. Also, streaming, I'm never on Twitch, but I'm streaming to Twitch now. I do have an account, but it's not like something I consume. I'm kind of old school. So like mostly I just go to YouTube. But anyway, oh, not Laravel Shift. I was thinking about Laravel Shift. We're on Shift. Anyway, so it's on Twitch now. So if you're seeing me on Twitch, say hello, because I have not done that before. All right, let me bring up the Dusk converter, and we'll get after. Okay, so we added all these in yesterday, and then it was like, oh, why is the class skeleton still there? Well, I figured it out, so let's remove that comment. What actually happened, if we go look at the original copy test, I kind of read this backwards. What's actually happening is we're finding all classes, and then we're taking only the header segment. We're not removing the header segment, we're only copying over the header segment, less the framework attributes. Sorry, less the imports that deal with PHP unit framework attributes. Now, this still probably doesn't necessarily need to be here, but as we saw, some of the tasks lower kind of expect that these things are already pre-scraped out. So basically what we're really doing here is we are copying your test, but we're only copying the header portion of your test. And then systematically, the pest converter stuff brings over the lifecycle methods, it brings over the testing methods, it brings over the data providers, it brings over the helper methods, and then it does anything it needs to do to make it finally kind of pest, and then it copies them back over the original. So, very critical piece as to why we were getting kind of a duplicate class and the skeleton was there is because I was copying over the whole file, and then we were appending all of these things, right? So, once I properly copied over the test, not duplicating code, I'm just going to extend that class, and I overwrote the determined test paths to not look at PHP unit anymore because we're not converting your entire test suite. We're just strictly converting the conventional browser, Dusk test browser location. That's kind of the convention. Now, again, there might be more here. I can adjust this logic based on user feedback. But for now, that actually got the PR. I reran the PR, and it got it working exactly as expected. So thus far, this Dusk converter is not only passing its smoke test, it's doing everything we've designed it to do so far. So today, I think it's time to get into the convert API piece. And I think this is going to be a pretty big piece. It's probably going to take multiple streams. I'll probably do a little work on it offline. And based on kind of what I've said before, we're definitely going to follow the 80-20 rule here in the fact that I'm probably not going to convert everything that Dusk has to offer. I mean, technically speaking, you can use Dusk to access Selenium directly. Just not going to be able to convert that kind of stuff. I'll notate it, in the PR comments, but the goal here will definitely, again, be 80-20. So the biggest thing we need to do in a Dusk test is to pull out kind of, it's all within a closure, right? So hence the title, closing in on the closures. So you know what, let's bring up Chrome. Let's bring up Chrome and go take a look at the Dusk. Let's just take an example of a Dusk test from, Laravel.com. Let's go to Dusk. And let's just go down and kind of take a look at one of their test cases. once we get past, here we go, example test. Okay, so as we see, everything in Dusk is going to be within this browse closure. Now, it makes for kind of a complex bit of code, but at the same time, it's also very helpful because we know that everything we're going to want to pay attention to is within the body of this closure. In addition, there's some syntactical pieces about this closure that also help us. For example, it's always going to be this browse, so we can trust that. And we know that whatever is passed in is the local variable name for the browser instance, which is going to allow us to leverage that and convert it again to the Pest Browser Testing bit. So we can still actually leave it browser. I think they call it page, more common in their stuff. And then, visit isn't this browse. So basically we can take what's in here, that's what we care about the most, and we know any references to this variable are really attempts to call out to the browser or the page that's being visited. And then we don't even need to worry about any of this use closure stuff, because when we unwrap it, all of those local variables will just become, all of those variables will become local to the outer scope, right? We don't need to, bring them into the closure anymore. So the point is that the wrapper for this, while it's going to be a little bit annoying to unwrap it from like a parsing perspective, it's actually helpful from an overall context perspective because we know that everything in here gets unwrapped and is what we want to focus on when we're converting the API. We don't have to look at the entire test case necessarily. So that'll be the focus today. I think the focus today is going to be to attempt to parse these out in code, analyze any of the variables being passed into the closure, and then pull the body. Again, we may not do any of the replacing just yet, but we'll definitely be trying to parse this block and get the content from it. So again, I don't expect that to be complete, but that'll be the goal for today. So that's the goal for today's stream. That's what we're going to try to do. So let's get after it. All right, so what we're going to do first, and this might be like kind of like the waterfall pipeline approach that we've been doing. I don't know yet. I think for now, I'll just make a Dusk converter, convert API kind of thing, and we'll clean it up. So convert API. This might end up being unwrap browser closure or something like that. I just don't know. I don't know how many things are actually going to get changed. I don't want this huge class. So if it becomes huge, then I'll just break it down into kind of the subtasks. But this is all going to be the convert API stuff. All right. So let's create this class. And let's have PHP Storm help us along the way. So we'll extend task. We'll add the method stubs. And again, I don't know if this will end up doing anything as far as like making a commit or anything like that yet. So let's just focus in. We're going to do a lot of like poor man's debugging here. We're just going to dump out, contents of files and all that kind of stuff. So I'll set up a very small test fixture. But let's just kind of pseudocode out what we're going to do here. We basically need to look at the test path we'll basically analyze it for this browse, right? That's the primary focus for now. There might be other Dusk things that happen, but I really think if you find this browse, we know we're going to need to convert that. There might be other conversions, but again, they're probably not the responsibility of this specific task. So we're basically going to search our path for some kind of this browse bit. And we really don't even need to be that strict right here. We could really just go so far as to search for like browse, right? We know if we find kind of this syntax, that's kind of good enough to start parsing. And we'll see this in code here in a second, but that's typically how I kind of do a first pass with like some simple string stuff. You can consider it a pre-optimization. Like I don't want to parse all of your code base. That's going to take time and resources. So I kind of want to try to limit them first in a very, very simple way, but reliable way. I don't want to be overly strict. So for example, you know, I could search for this arrow browse, but you know, what if somebody has broken this down, right, on a line? What if, you know, what if that syntax is slightly different? What if somebody does capital browse? I mean, you can, it's PHP. You know, not the way I write code, but again, for the largest, to cast the widest net, we're just kind of going to search for the baseline thing. It's pretty unlikely someone's messing with that part of the syntax, right? So let's look for browse, and then we'll basically parse files for closures, right? That's really what we're doing at a high level here. And then at that point, we'll start, you know, we'll unwrap. For now, we'll just focus on unwrapping the closure, right? We won't even convert. I don't want to even convert anything today. If we can find the closure and unwrap it, or at least have it to unwrap, I think that's very good progress for today. Okay, so to look at the test path, this is pretty straightforward stuff. Let's start breaking this out. So this is basically like what I kind of do here is shift paths. I bring in the shift facade. I find PHP files containing, and this will basically contain browse. And we'll do this. I think we share this out in the shared data, like test paths. We'll go look at this. Let me close the chat here so I can see this better. So I think we look in test paths. We can go back to copy test to see if I'm right about this. Yeah, share test paths, determine the paths. Okay. So yes, test paths is going to be that shared location. And again, this just makes sure that all of the tasks in this shift are kind of doing what we want. And then we'll basically say if empty, return, right? There's nothing to do if for some reason we don't even find browse. Otherwise, we're gonna for each over these suckers and we're going to parse them out. So I think we're gonna do contents. We're gonna use our thing so it's easier to test. It's really just a wrapper, but we're gonna do that. We're gonna get the contents. And then we're basically going to get occurrences, and this will be like a this parse, and we'll pass it the contents. Now I have a lot of these methods. Let me go find a recent one because they're pretty much all the same signature. Let me find this parse. Annotations feels pretty good. Okay, let's borrow this one and we'll kind of break this up here. So what we'll really just have here is a static finder, and we can get rid of that and we'll do finder parse. This will give us the occurrences. Why can I not spell this today? Occurrences. There we go. We could probably just straight return these, actually. This was kind of a compound one. We could actually just straight return. This is a pretty straightforward bit here. And instead of class finder, what we're really going to have is like browser closure finder. Let's call it that. Let me make this. And I think just off memory, I'm going to go through this, but just off memory, there's a middleware finder, I think. Somewhere there's a middleware finder, I'm pretty sure. Or no, it's not a middleware finder. What is it called? It's like constructor closures. Where is that? I could go look at the controller middleware. Here we go. This is going to feel... I think this is going to feel the closest to what we're actually going to build. And let me go back to the docs. I think it's always easier to explain these parsers from the docs. So let me do that. let me go to, well, first of all, we got to actually go back a few versions, okay? These finders are typically used throughout Shift, and in this case, this controller middleware is for converting from old controller middleware to new controller middleware. So we need to go all the way back to Laravel 10 to probably still see this in the docs. So let me look for controller middleware. Maybe middleware, controller middleware. Here we go. Okay, here you go. So the old way that you used to do controller middleware was in your constructor, you would, just say this middleware off, right? And in here, there could actually be a closure, right? Yeah, here we go, perfect. So that's what the controller middleware finder is parsing. It already expects this structure. So that's why I chose it, because if we consider this browse, it's pretty much exactly the same, right? It's browse instead of middleware, and then it's got a closure. So the parser for that, the code for the logic for parsing this is very, very similar. So that's why I chose it, because the structure of code that we're going to pull out is basically exactly the same here. It just is browse instead of middleware. So it'll give us a good jump start is the point. Okay, I don't think we have any chains. So basically the way these work is this builds on top of Nikic parser, and any kind of static analysis tool that you use for PHP is built on top of Nikic parser. It's the de facto, parsing library. So PHP Stan and Rector and all these tools, they use Nikic parser. Now I've said 100 times, 1,000 times probably, Shift is a 10-year-old code base. When I first wrote Shift, only Nikic parser existed. None of these other tools that are now out there and a little bit, maybe gaining popularity, they weren't out there. PHP Stan wasn't out there. Rector definitely wasn't out there. So, sometimes people ask, oh, do you use Rector for Shift? And it's like, I've looked at it before, but the reality is at this point in time, as we've seen, I have all of these Finder classes myself that are highly customized to Laravel applications. There's kind of no need for me to go and use something like PHP Stan or Rector because they're built for very specific other purposes, and I would have to kind of relearn and rebuild all of these finders in their library format. So the long story short is I've just gotten used to using Nikic parser directly. So while it's a little dense and a little technical, that's just what I've always used, so that's what I know. So anyway, basically these finders have a search method, and the search it gives you parts of the syntax tree, and from there you say true or false if this snippet of code that it finds should be matched, right? So search, match, you can think of it kind of like the same thing. Find, it's all kind of the same wording here. Their API uses the word search. So what we do is we say, okay, if the node is not a method call, then false. Immediately get out of here. We only care about method calls. If you're making a method call that has no arguments, get out of here. We know that we have at least a closure signature. Then we can go so far as to say, okay, hey, is the name of the method, we know that it's a method call now, if the name of the method is middleware in our previous copied code example, if it's not, then return false. So we can actually get rid of the array here. Let's start customizing this. So if string to lower is not equal to browse, then in this case we would know to bail, right? So we're going to start customizing this. So it's got to be a method. It's got to have arguments. It's got to be a method called browse. All right. And then we're not going to worry about chains, so we can get rid of that. This verify, what does this do? Oh, we're verifying the chains. So we won't need that complexity, so we can get rid of that. Okay, so what else do we need? So we could invert this a little bit, actually. So it's got to be a method. It's got to be called browse. I would probably go so far as to say that the variable calling browse has to be this, right? So we could say something like if node var is not an instance of variable, then we would return false, right? So the calling part of it, let's go back over here. The calling part of it has to be this, the variable for the method call, right? So again, it's a variable, it's got a method call. This is the variable holding the expression. All right. And then we could go so far as to say, okay, it is a variable. So if node var, I think there's name. Yeah. So if it's not is string, right? We saw in there, there's an expression or a string. At this point, it has to be a string, or node var name is not equal to this, then we would return false. Okay, so what this is doing is now it's saying, okay, we got a variable. We know that the left side of this is a variable. Okay, that variable has to be a string. It can't be like what do they call that? Like an interpolated string. So it can't be, again, easier to look at code. It can't be something like var, browse, right? That would be another expression, or it can't be something crazy, that you're doing, inside here. All these interesting things you can do with PHP. Like, it can't be any of that. It just flat out has to be, this part has to be a string, and that string has to be this. That's what it has to be. So, and we could be a little bit helpful here. I think I do this actually. We could str to lower this again, just in case someone's doing something strange like that. I don't write my code that way, but people do. So anyway, str2 lower, thank you. All right, and I think if we look at, if I do a search for this, I bet you I find this elsewhere. Yeah, I find this elsewhere in the application. So if we kind of look around, we can see that all these things, right? Name's got to be an identifier, var's got to be a variable. Yeah, we're gonna break it all up. Okay. So yeah, we probably should, again, to be consistent with the code we just looked at, we should probably do the same thing. Name needs to be identifier. Yeah. So if it's not an identifier, again, if it's some kind of interesting, complex thing, that would be something more like, this arrow call, that'd be something like that. We don't want to parse those. So you got to be just a flat out, super basic method call to the word browse, lowercase browse. Then you got to have a variable on the other side. That variable's got to be this. Now you got to have arguments. And we should go so far now to say that your argument, that your first argument needs to be a closure, right? And we could go so far as to say, like, look, you got to just have one argument. If browse is getting I don't even think browse accepts additional arguments. We could go look that up. But the point is if you're not one argument, get on out of here. All right, so node args 0 is got to be an instance of closure. No. Closure. Yeah, there we go. Node expression closure. Cool. And at this point, we're good. We're good. We found what we wanted to find, I think. So all of this is, again, just a bunch of guard clauses to basically filter the syntax tree to just the nodes that we care about. And basically the node that we care about is going to end up being the method call, right? It's going to give us that whole method call, and then from there we can dissect it based on the assumption that we know that it's been pre-filtered to only be these browse calls with a single closure argument. So we can get rid of chains. We can get rid, I think we can probably get rid of occurrences. I think I spelled this wrong, it looks like. Okay. What else do we need? Extract middleware. I don't think we need that. I don't think we need any of these Don't think we need any of these things. All right. And then what we would want here is probably the closure. Well, we probably want body is probably what we want. And the reality is we kind of want this part. Yeah, okay, here, let's slow down. We want the body, and then we want browsers. We want the browser names. Okay, so let's go back to Dusk. Let's go back to Dusk. Let's set up a test fixture so we can actually run this and see it dumping out some PHP code. So that'll take a second, but I think it's going to be worth it. Let's go back to Dusk. Let's go down to getting started. Generating test. Where's here we go. Browser basics. Let's just copy this. Let's copy this sucker. Let's do a make dir on tests, fixtures, Dusk converter. Laravel Dusk. What's under here? Do I not have the latest? Git pull. Everything's up to date. Where did I put this? Did I put it under PHP on accident? Let's go find it. Apparently I put it somewhere weird. Test fixtures, Laravel. I know I made test cases for this. PHP, nope. Dusk converter, tests. That's a very strange spot. Let's fix it. These typically mirror, they're supposed to mirror the names. See, they're supposed to mirror kind of the names of the converter or where the shift is. So we made this a Laravel shift. So let's bring this up here. And then to fix that, let's find anywhere I was saying test Dusk converter. This actually will now need to be Laravel Dusk converter. All right, replace all. That feels right. Okay, and then let's go down to the actual tests. Or well, sorry, let's do this. Okay, so let's pb paste into test fixtures Laravel Dusk converter. Oh wait, no, we still got to make the dir. Hold on, we haven't done that yet. Make dir convert API. All right, and then let's pb paste that last argument. Yeah, sorry, pb paste last argument slash or basic test dot php. Did I do? Wait. I think I had that backwards. I think it's $. I think it's bang $. But whatever. I messed it up now. pb paste that into basic test.php. Did I have that in the clipboard? There we go. Do it again. All right, cool. And then we'll do a dot after. Okay. We'll see all this kind of come together here in a second. It just takes a little bit of setup for a test. Testing always takes a little bit of extra time, but it's very, very worth it. All right, I'm going to copy the copy tests, and we're going to call this the convert API test. And we will change anywhere we're saying copy test to convert API. Cool. We got a setup, so it does nothing when no tests are found. Let's change this to the Dusk converter. And let's import that And I don't think we're going to have as many tests in here. Let's just focus this into just one test, our basic test for now. So let's just get this back to the basic test. I'm going to have to set up the... Yeah, I'm going to have to set this up. Browser. Yes. We will have to set this up to be, it's an array of test browser. There you go. Share. There we go. So this sets up the fixture. Okay, so we're going to fake a project for the Dusk Converter shift. We're going to put at this basic test path our basic test. Now this is wrong, so we're going to say Laravel Dusk Converter / convert API, and then this will be basic test.php, I think we called it, right? Yep, basic test.php. Okay, cool. And then down here, we're going to assert that this dot after, and change this to browser. Okay, so let's review this. We set up a fake project for the Dusk Converter. We stuff into the shared paths because this was preset by a different task. We stuff into the shared paths our test browser path, so that should get this part lined up. That'll trigger the search to look for browse. If we go look at our test fixture, we should see browse is in there, right? So what should happen is we should find this file. It'll send it to the finder that we're working on. And for now, we're just going to get a DD. We won't even have a failed expectation, but we'll get a DD of hopefully us finding that fixture and all the correct information. We'll now need to build out the information for that occurrence in the fixture. So we're not actually converting anything yet. So technically this is going to pass because we don't change the file. So let's change the name here. So it'll say it, for now we'll just say it unwraps the Dusk browser closure. All right. And again, I'll probably change this name from convert API to just unvert because it's very likely I'm going to have multiple steps as part of this. So let's keep going. So what we can do actually now is we should, if I get my tabs right, we should vendor bin PHP unit. We should be able to run this. We got a failure. Convert API parse. Undefined method. Convert API parse. Okay, so I must have... Oh, I think we called it like class or something. I copied that code wrong. Let's get this right. All right. Let's go to convert API. It's called parse class. Okay, parse. All right, let's try that again. Okay, failed asserting that null is identical to array. Where is this? It does nothing when no tests are found. Oh, I've got some kind of assertion here that I don't care about. Yeah. Okay, test. Yeah, let's set this up right too. So test browser. No instances. Did not find browse instances. And then no comments. We're going to log something out. We need to properly set this up again. There you go. All right, let's get into this and fix that. So here we actually want to say log event did not find browse instances. I think I give that a different format. It matters. Let's just make sure we get it right. Could not find providers. Yeah, I'll find it later. This is good enough for now. Let's run this. Yeah, it should pass because we're not actually changing the files. What we care about now is to go back. All this was really just to set up our Finder. So we could go back here and start dumping. Let's dump instances, right? And so we should have at least one instance. And again, it's going to look pretty crazy because it's going to be the abstract syntax tree represented through Nikic parser objects. But we should find one. We don't. Okay, so that means something's wrong with our Finder. Okay, so let's just add a bunch of calls here. And we'll say dump returning yeah, maybe we should say no browse. Now we're going to get a lot of false positives here, so just to tone down the noise. No identifier, not browse, not a variable. It's not a big file, so not this. No args. And then finally, oh, look at this. I already see the problem. we're not a closure. We need to be not a closure. Okay, so not a closure. So we're going to get a lot of noise here, but now I think we'll actually end up getting an instance, and we do. Okay, so all that was for nothing. We found it in the process of debugging. We just didn't have to run our debugger. So let's just bring this out. So if we, just to clean this up a little bit, if we dump count on instances, my guess is we have one, and we do. So let's go look at it. Again, it's going to be a huge object dump, but we have method call start line 24, end line 30. Let's go check that. Again, we know that this is right, but just to kind of demo how this works. So start line 24, end line 30. It found that chunk. It found that snippet of code within this file. We have everything we need to kind of continue here. So now it's a matter of pulling out, we need to pull out these variable names, and we need to pull out the body of the closure. That's what we want to get from this object. So it seems to be working correctly. Hey Shiva, how's it going? Hey Samuel. Oh yeah, you saw it, Samuel. You saw it before I did. I was missing that. Multiple browsers come into play. Yeah, Jeffrey. Yeah, in Dusk you can. If we look down in Dusk, you can actually, if I scroll the right screen, you can actually use multiple browsers. So again, that's why we're going to end up parsing this, because it's going to let us know if you are actually using multiple browsers. So we need to handle kind of all of those arguments. So that might be something beyond the scope of this stream. But the point is, I think we're finding everything correctly now. We just were missing that. That was incorrect. And then we've got our line. All that should be good. And now we can kind of clean this up by just dumping occurrences. So if we look at this, instead of all of that, our occurrences are going to be a little bit tighter. 24 to 30, this gives us our string offsets. I actually tend to work with the string offsets because I don't have to worry about formatting as much. I know that the string offsets are basically going to be the interior portion of the body, and I can just trim that and get what I need. What I'd like to see is the body itself having lines and offsets. So that's kind of the next goal. I don't care about getting the string of the body. Nikic parser is wonderful at parsing and searching and kind of traversing the syntax tree and getting nodes. And it does a little bit of replacement even if you want, but that's not really its primary job. And so I don't end up using Nikic parser to actually rebuild your syntax tree and dump out the file, because they actually end up changing a lot of code. So what I end up doing is I parse your stuff, but I'll actually end up doing string manipulation from there. And again, having these line numbers and offsets makes it a lot easier to work with the strings, because then I just start doing substring and this and that, and I can analyze tokens. So I use Nikic parser to parse to give me high fidelity that I actually found what I found in your code, because again, it's parsing the actual syntax. But to kind of put Humpty Dumpty back together again with like minimal impact, you can actually surgically do that better with strings. Okay, so let's pull line. And let's pull offset. And it'll be similar to this. Honestly, I don't even care about the lines. I probably only care about the offset. Okay, it won't be instance. It'll actually be this. It'll actually be this. And, sorry, it'll be this. Let's break this up so we can see this better. Okay, and it won't be just value. We know that value... Oh, did it move my process up? You bastard. Come on, PHP Storm. It's not what I wanted. All right. It'll actually be a closure. What does a closure have? I'm pretty sure a closure has statements. Ugh. Statements is kind of annoying. You have to get... It's an array of statements. You have to get the first statement and the last statement, and you... Okay. I've done this before. Let's find stmts. Yeah. Find traits. I'm trying to see where I get like the yeah, here it is. Yeah. Definition statements last. End. Yeah, this is kind of interesting. Okay, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take this. I'm gonna make this a method. It's just gonna get too ugly here. So let's just say this extract closure body, right? All right, and this is gonna return an array, and it's ultimately gonna end up looking like this, but it's gonna allow us to work with it a little bit better. So let's call this closure, and let's take this. And now we can say closure statements 0. It's just, I don't have to do a bunch of ugliness up top. We'll return this. Ah. Yeah. And then we can just go end on this, I think. End. Cool. And we'll pass in closure. This will give us some better typing too. Yes, closure. We don't even need that. We could just pass in the closure directly. All right, cool. It's just, yeah, it's just going to give us a little bit better of a look here, right? Oh, I'm missing that. There we go. And that comes off. Okay. So, yeah. Does PHP 4 have like array first? Array key first. I think 8.5 adds the array first and array last. I think for now you still have to do the pointer crap. Okay, anyway, if we run this again, we now get body offsets for this. Now again, this is string offset, so it's not as easy to look at. We could very easily change this to get start line and end line just real fast so we can test it. So 25 and 29. So see how it's actually just the interior now? So if we go back to our basic test, 25 and 29, we get the interior. So proof that this kind of pulls the middle. All right, let's mess with those references, and then I think that's good enough for today. Okay, so browsers will be this. We'll do the same thing. We'll extract closer parameters, right? Parameters. All right, and this will be another array. And it'll be pretty similar to this, actually. So let's just borrow this. Boop. Okay, so what does the closure give us? Params. Array of parameters. Perfect. All right. So I don't know if we need the offset here. What we actually end up needing are all of the names. So we might be able to collect this. So let's collect closure params. This will be a params array, right? And really what we want, let's go look at that again. Sorry. We got an array of params, and what we want, we don't care about the type. To my knowledge, you don't pass anything else into this closure. This closure doesn't accept anything else, to my knowledge. Again, 80-20 rule. From the documentation, like, nothing else gets passed in here other than browsers. So I don't need to, like, analyze the type and do all that stuff, I don't believe, yet. May I find that I'm wrong? Sure. But I think for now, all we really care about is extracting. I think we probably only care about extracting the variable name. Parameter variable. And the variable will have a name. So kind of like before we did, you know, up top here for the closure, we're kind of going to end up doing the same thing, but just in the parameters. So we'll basically filter, or we'll kind of pluck, or no, that's fine. We can filter where param name, is that what we said? What is this? So params is going to give us, we're going to collect a bunch of params. We're going to filter them where the var identify, oh, no, that's the type. Where a var has to be an instance of a variable. Fingers are working a little too much today. Okay, so param var has to be an instance of variable. Variable. Yes. And it's a string. Right? And again, you're not passing anything else in here, so like this pretty much should always pass. We could just take the params and pluck the name, but just so I don't have any like crazy exceptions, and then we would basically, well, we can't pluck. Will that automatically, I don't know if that automatically toStrings it. And then this does what? This gives you a collection. And we'll say all, right? Let's see what happens. Extract parameter 0. Oh, yes. We got to call it with something, don't we? Helps when you call it with the closure. Browsers got one but gave it null. I think we can't pluck name. We'd have to pluck var. There it is. But see, it's going to give us a bit more. We actually don't need that in this case. So does pluck take a function? I always forget. Array pluck this item's value. Value data get. Value can be an array and int. It can't be can it be, can I do var dot name? Question mark. Oh, looks like I can. Sweet. Okay, there you go. So we'll collect all the parameters. We're gonna filter the variable names only to the ones that, again, we believe. This is really just a fail-safe. Honestly, like, I don't have to do that. It's gonna work. If someone had a different parameter in here, this would just explode. And you know what? Thinking about it, I kind of probably do want it to explode, because then I'm going to have a stack trace that it exploded at extract closure params, and like, I'll know, hey, what are you passing to that browse closure? So here we go. This is everything we need. All right. So we have the body, we have the general offset of the whole section. That's going to allow us to replace the entire thing, right? So again, switching gears to kind of string manipulation mode. We have the outer entire occurrence snippet. We have the inner entire occurrence snippet, and we know each of the names of the browsers that are going to be passed into this closure. Combined with all of that, we'll be able to then switch to string replacement, basically taking this replacement, performing sub replacements on it, such as finding anywhere browser visit is called, browser names visit is called. We replace that with just visit. And we can keep the variable name, to be honest. Like, we don't have to convert that. We could very easily convert that to page or whatever, you know, the pest convention is. And then we would take this inner portion, unindent it, and then replace the outer portion with it, right? So this simple array is going to give us everything we need back in our convert. If we go all the way back up to our convert API bit, this is kind of the last part, right? We basically now take the occurrences. So we'll say if empty occurrences continue, cool. Otherwise, the to-do is to now unwrap. So the to-do would be unwrap closure. And then we'll replace visit calls, maybe. Again, this might simply be unwrapping it. It kind of just depends on how many things I'm actually replacing. If I'm replacing like dozens of method calls, then fine. But Nuno talked about how, you know, the API between these is pretty darn close. Like, it's still called visit. You still have type. You still have press. You still have all of the assertions. A handful of them might be different, but I think for the most part, like, this is fine. So this convert API might simply be unwrapping this, and, you know, instead of it being browser visit, I would just say browser equals visit. And then that way now, if you're using browser in multiple spots of this, you know, inner closure statement, it's all just going to be fine, because it's what got assigned if you want to keep doing it. If everything's just in one simple chain, great. The browser variable's never used. So, like, you'll be able to spot that and you can clean up your code. So from there, it would just be kind of going in and making sure that these underlying bits, you know, don't need any kind of change, right? And again, depending on how many of those are, you know, I might make another task. I might just put it in here if it's only 2 or 3. It'd be easier to put in here because we have that inner closure piece. So this is what's to do. It's a lot of string stuff. I'll probably just copy it from another area, because again, at this point, as you can see, Shift is really just a bunch of like pipe and filtering. It's a very basic pipeline, you know, design pattern. It pipelines the tasks. Each task goes in. It pipelines files that need to be changed and performs an action, and then goes to the next one, goes to the next one, it just you know, works through this all the way down. So we find anything that has browse, we parse it to increase the fidelity. That way it's entirely accurate about the code that it finds, but we actually switch back to string manipulation to change it. That way we're a little more surgical about it instead of like rewriting your whole syntax tree. Because again, Nikic parser and these tools are not the best at re-outputting the syntax tree. They will change more than just what we want to change. So from that perspective, again, string manipulation ends up being much more surgical. It's just a little bit more tedious, right? Because you got to find this offset, replace it with a substring, unindent this block. Like, there's some stuff, but I've got code for that. I'm going to copy it off stream, drop it in here, and we should see test passing for Monday's stream. So I think Monday's stream will be the focus on this part. I'll probably unwrap the closure myself. That way, the kind of tedious minutia of plucking out the string, is not something I have to stream because it is tedious, but I've done it 1,000 times now, so it's easy peasy. Anyway, let me check the chat. All right, I think we're caught up. Thanks everybody for joining live. Have a good weekend. We'll carry on Monday.